Are urging government to empower the local industry. One even lamented that the film industry remains white-dominated. It's important for government to level the playing field, they say, by coming up with interventions that will empower black practitioners. Today is the first day of the two-day South African Film Summit underway at the Skyrink Studios in the Johannesburg CBD. And to talk more about this is the Arts and Culture Minister, Nathi Mthethwa. Minister, a very good evening to you and thank you so much for speaking to us.
This is coming from the studio. It's fine. It's with the Minister. We'll just listen to the studio.
Evening, Tsepiso and viewers at home.
I'd like to start with the theme of the summit. You say is to ask the film industry the fundamental question of how they could contribute to developing South Africa. And I understand that there was quite a lot of criticism about where the industry is at the moment. How did you receive it?
Well, to the contrary. People generally express the view that they can see where we are going to, and they see the objectives of government in supporting the film industry. What they were raising, particularly on the issue of funding, is how do we synergize funding from the government point of view. As you would know, that the funding model we have cuts across departments. You'll have entities as well, like IDC, NEF, and so on. Now, what we are working towards is to respond to that and the perennial problem of inadequacy of funding, as it were. But the summit was more than that. The summit was about ideas, about what to do and how to promote innovation in the industry, issues of education, training and development in the industry. And that's why I was saying it was a success, because it wasn't your usual way of coming and complaining, but people were chatting, especially the industry itself.
Minister,
were chatting
allow me to say it's not necessarily complaining. Allow me to say it's not necessarily complaining. I'm just looking at visuals there of Eric Mieni. He was lamenting the fact that the playing field is not level from a racial perspective. There's lack of representativity when it comes to gender, some were complaining. Mm-hmm.
That's, you captured it correctly there, Tsepiso. Precisely the point. I was saying, maybe complaining is somewhat irrelevant here. I was saying people were able to identify issues. The problem statement was shared by everybody. But what was significant was that because we have these limitations, which are structural, have to do with issues of race, as you say, of gender and disability, and issues related to young people. So they would identify this limitation and this gap, and they would be able to say that because of this is what we need to do. There are specific areas and things which we agreed upon, and one of them is that we need to be consistent about our interactions, but we also need to ensure that the kind of resolutions we have taken here, some of those resolutions have to do with how we work as government, and others have to do with what the industry itself is supposed to follow up and ensure that we meet each other in getting on board partners to help to work with us, industry, government and other stakeholders, to ensure that the industry grows, because we have a challenge of countries which are our size and which are at our level as developing nations, who are having who are seeing success in the industry itself.
I want to ask about the money itself, Minister, and how it's managed. There's the example of the Legends project and the 8 million rand that's said to be missing. So while acknowledging that money may not be properly allocated, but have you at least been able to establish where this 8 million rand is said to have gone in, and how far are those investigations?
I think we are mixing things. I think we are mixing things at Tsepiso. We're talking about the summit. The issue of the money, we are still asking the bank, how could people withdraw money when there are regulations and laws? And this had nothing to do with the summit which we are in now here.
Is
the police are
management of money, Minister?
So the bank, the money was put in the bank. This is fraud. And what we're saying to you is that this fraud must be investigated by the law enforcement agencies. To put money under your pillow would be mismanaging money, would be all that what you are talking about. Here, it's an institution called FNB. And the money was put at FNB, and FNB must explain what happened to the money.
Okay.
And we are waiting for the police. And this has nothing to do with the summit which we are having.
Then let's talk about some of the conversations that you ought to be having or are having. The creative and cultural industry, a microcosm of South African society. And I'm thinking of a project such as Ingleba, which raised a lot of heckles based on who was saying what. Did you have those conversations about how we South Africans can be more open to talking about these things and allow filmmakers to show their perspective of South Africa?
No, we didn't talk about those. I think what we looked at mostly is what is our role as, for instance, members of BRICS countries, South Africa that is. How do we access that market? What is it that we need to do as government for people to access the market? How do we expand on the continent so that those countries which have made a mark in that, following the research which we have done ourselves, we find ourselves in a space where they are, as it were, and even surpass them. And in doing that, we were also looking at really building audiences here at home, because charity begins at home. We would want to access markets elsewhere, but if there is no audience here in South Africa, we are going to struggle for other people to want to listen to our story when we can't tell our story to ourselves as South Africans first and foremost.
Thank you so much for your time. The Arts and Culture Minister, Nathi Mthethwa, speaking to us there from the Skyrink Studios in Johannesburg, the theatre in Braamfontein.